I flew home for Christmas and found the house in darkness. No lights, no laughter, just silence pressing through the walls. On the fridge, a torn piece of paper in my mother's rushed handwriting. Used your money for your brother. $25,000 I'd saved through years of skipped dinners and double shifts. Gone in one sentence. I didn't cry. I laughed. 3 days later, they called me, their voices shaking, terrified. That was the moment I realized the roles in our family had changed forever. I'm about to share something close to my heart. But before I do, can you say hi in the comments or tell me where you're from? I love hearing how far my story reached. It's always good to know I'm not alone in this. Thank you. And now let me tell you everything. And if my story touches you, please consider subscribing. It helps more than you know and keeps this channel alive for stories like mine. My name is Kais Mercer, and this is how Christmas changed everything. I pulled up to the house a little after 9 p.m. The frost on the windshield hadn't fully cleared, and the headlights cut through the fog like a searchlight over something long abandoned. No porch light, no Christmas wreath, just the silhouette of a house that used to be a home, now swallowed in silence. I checked the date on my phone again. December 24th. I hadn't gotten it wrong. I stepped out into the wet gravel and made my way up the front steps. The same crack still split the top stair, the one Dad always said he'd fix. I bent down and reached beneath the chipped ceramic frog by the flower pot. Still there, still hiding the spare key like some relic of a time we trusted each other. The key slid into the door with a click that echoed more than it should have. Inside, no voices, no warmth, just the faint hum of a struggling heater and the light buzz of the fridge. I stepped into the kitchen, the only light on in the house, a dim yellow cast from the overhead bulb. And there he was, Grandpa Arthur, hunched over a plate, with a half-eaten sandwich, holding it like it might fall apart if he chewed too hard. He looked up at me like he hadn't seen another human in days. His eyes tired but kind. "You're here," he said, like I was late to something no one had told me about. I dropped my bag by the door and scanned the room. "Where is everyone?" He nodded toward the fridge. I walked over, already uneasy, and found a ripped sheet of notebook paper taped to the door. My mother's handwriting, quick and slanted. "Used your money for your brother. We'll explain later. Watch, Grandpa." I didn't move. Not at first. I read it again, then again. $25,000 gone. 4 years of saving, double shifts, canceled weekends. I'd skipped meals, driven a coughing car, lived on rice and pride just to build that safety net. And with one sentence, one torn piece of paper, they'd shredded it. I turned back to Grandpa, still holding the note like a police report from a break-in. "They left yesterday," he said softly. "Flew to Maui." I didn't say anything. Couldn't. I opened the fridge. 3 nearly empty condiments. A jar of olives, expired eggs, and nothing else. The bread on the counter had mold blooming on one end. The sink was full. A red-stamped utility bill was tucked beside the toaster. "Final notice." I pointed to his sandwich. "Is that all you've eaten?" He shrugged. "Haven't managed much else this week." My hands clenched, but I kept my voice steady. "Okay," I said. "Let's fix that first." I made him oatmeal with apples and honey the way he used to make it for me when I was 5. He ate it slowly, as if surprised it was real. When he finished, he looked at me like I just cooked him a steak. "Thank you," he said. I washed the bowl, trying to keep my hands from shaking. I didn't cry. Not even close. I'd cried enough in the past. This was something else. Now I sat at the table, opened my laptop, logged into my bank account, and saw it there. Final transfer 3 days ago to a brokerage firm. Under my parents' names. Balance Z Dayer. I stared at the screen, then the ceiling, but no answers came. I'd opened that account at 16. I remember handing the paperwork to my mom after my first month working nights at the diner. She'd smiled and said, "Thanks. Prey on young people. Just send it to us. We'll keep it safe." And like a fool, I did every month. 500, then 6, then 8. No vacations, no big purchases, no help. Just work and save because I didn't want to drown like they did. When Landon turned 16, he got a party, a new phone, and a 3-day trip to San Diego. When I turned 16, I got a cracked backpack and a list of bills. I used to tell myself it didn't matter that I was stronger, that I could carry more because I had to. But standing in that kitchen surrounded by silence and dirty dishes and betrayal taped to the fridge, I knew something else. I had been carrying what wasn't mine. And I was done. I pulled the utility bill, the moldy bread, and the note off the fridge, laid them out on the table. I opened a folder on my desktop and named it Damage Control. Then I picked up my phone and took a photo. Morning came slow and gray, as if the sky was just as tired as I was. I woke to the sound of Grandpa coughing rough and dry and found him leaning on the kitchen counter, his hands trembling as he poured water. I caught the glass before it slipped. "Did you take your morning meds?" I asked. He looked down. "Ran out 2 days ago." I asked Lyric to pick them up, but he didn't need to finish the sentence. I opened the cabinet where we always kept his pill organizer. Empty. The refill slip lay on the table. Pink highlighter circling a date 5 days ago. The bag from the pharmacy still sealed. "You haven't taken these?" I asked. He shook his head embarrassed. Didn't want to be a burden. He wasn't. They were. I opened my laptop again, started pulling the last 6 months of transactions from my account and his. That's when the pattern started to emerge. Tiny withdrawals, 50 here, 90 there, groceries, family emergency, travel, nothing large enough to trigger alarm, but none of it made sense. I matched each charge against dates and locations, pulling up social media posts in parallel. My mom had posted from Maui with a caption, "Set dinner with the fam, earned it." The same day she withdrew $400 labeled as emergency vet visit. We've never owned a pet. I checked the pantry again. Still no groceries. I checked the fridge. Same bottle of olives. The charges didn't match reality. I called the pharmacy. Someone tried to pick up Mr. Arthur Mercer's medication using an old ID. The clerk said we denied the pickup. They seemed annoyed. Did they say who they were? No name. Just said they were family. I didn't ask. More. I already knew. I recorded the call. When I got off, I added a new folder to the desktop medical. Inside it went the pharmacy slip, the sealed pill bag, and the audio file from the call. Then I dug into the transaction notes. One transfer labeled family emergency matched the exact weekend Landon flew to LA for a networking opportunity he'd posted about on his story. Another marked kitchen remodel loan matched a lump sum pulled from Grandpa's account last spring. He'd never seen a single tile replaced. The betrayal ran deeper than I thought. I checked the mail. 3 more envelopes marked urgent utilities insurance. A bounce check from the home nurse agency they'd stopped paying. I lined them up, took another photo, saved it at Narano 2. Neglect proof.japk. Then I wrote out a checklist. Revoke joint access to all family accounts. Redirect Grandpa's Social Security to a secure account. Set security pins on all medical and utility services. Begin documenting a formal record of neglect and financial mismanagement. This wasn't just cleanup anymore. This was evidence, and I was building a case. The morning after Christmas, I drove Grandpa to Portland. We didn't speak much on the ride. The sky was pale and overcast, the road wet from an early rain. He kept glancing at me like he wanted to say something, but didn't know how to start. I didn't push. I needed my mind quiet. Rachel had arranged everything. A walk-in notarization at the local pharmacy, a folder with all the necessary POA documentation already printed and marked where he needed to sign. She met us in front of the store with her usual no-nonsense calm. We stood in the cramped little corner behind the prescription counter while Grandpa slowly signed each page, his hands shaking slightly as he pressed the pen down. When he was done, He looked up at me and placed his hand over mine. I should have done this a year ago, he said quietly. We got it notarized within 20 minutes. From there, things moved fast. Back in the car, I called Social Security, gave them the new account routing number, and had his monthly deposit rerouted away from the joint family account. Then I called every utility linked to the house: electric, gas, water, internet, and added passcodes and PIN protections to prevent any unauthorized changes. The medical records were next. I logged into the online health portal and updated his power of medical decision-making. Primary contact, financial agent, emergency consent, all changed to my name. I didn't even stop to let the screen load all the way before moving on. By mid-afternoon, we sat in a cafe near the Willamette River. I bought him a black coffee and a cinnamon roll. He barely touched either. He looked tired, but lighter, like something had been lifted. I opened my laptop and began building the terms. Not vengeance, protection. The repayment plan was simple. $25,000 returned in monthly installments. Interest compounded annually. Miss a payment and it would trigger legal action. Attached were digital copies of every piece of evidence: the fridge photo, the moldy bread, the bank transfers labeled family investment, the pharmacy voicemail, the refill slip with the pink highlighter. I named the folder exhibits and dragged each file in. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before buried deep in. Grandpa's bank statements from earlier in the year. A withdrawal labeled kitchen remodel. Loan dated mid-March. $8,000. I asked Grandpa about it. He blinked. They said it was temporary for new cabinets. I haven't seen them since. There were no new cabinets, no paint, no construction. That $8,000, just like my $25,000, had vanished into the same black hole called Landon. I added it to the record. Back in Etoria that night, I printed 2 full copies of the repayment agreement. One for them, one for my files. I placed mine in a locked drawer, scanned the signature page, blank for now, and stared at the file name on the screen. Repayment terms chunks v1.pdf. I closed the lid. My phone buzzed. Dad calling. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. 4th ring, I hit decline. I wanted to know how long it would take them to come crawling. And I wanted to be ready when they did. 3 days after Christmas, the phone started ringing again. Same number, same name. Dad in bold letters buzzing against the corner of the kitchen table like it had something urgent to say. I let it ring and ring and ring. On the 4th attempt, I answered. I didn't say anything at first, just listened. There was static on the line, then the low crash of waves in the distance. Soft laughter. Maybe a radio or a steel drum band. Then his voice came through, shaky, strained. Kais, thank God. We need to talk. I didn't answer. He cleared his throat. The market dropped. We didn't see it coming. It's complicated. We just need to get through this week. I kept my eyes on the folder in front of me. Repayment terms. Neatly printed, highlighted, organized, every file ready. I leaned back in the chair. We lost almost everything, he continued. The fund, it's wiped out. I finally spoke. You mean the money that wasn't yours to invest? It wasn't selfish, he said. We did it for the family, for your future, for Landon. I said nothing. I just need a little to stabilize things. Temporary. We'll pay you back. You're always the one who's good with logistics. I looked at the folder again. There on the desk was the photo I'd taken of the fridge, the empty bread bag, the overdraft letter, and Grandpa's unopened medication still in the pharmacy bag. You knew that money wasn't yours, I said flatly. He hesitated. It was a calculated risk. I could hear clinking glasses behind him. Distant music. Then a voice in the background, Landon's loud and laughing, probably poolside. You're still in Maui. I said. We're sorting things out, trying to figure out next steps. You took my savings. You drained Grandpa's account. You left him without medication and lied to me about it. And now you want help. His tone shifted harder now. This isn't the time to be self-righteous, Kais. No. I said it's the time to be exact. Silence. Just send something, he finally said. Even a little. I reached over, opened the drawer, and pulled out the second printed packet of the repayment agreement. I laid it on the table beside my phone. I'll send something, I said. Then I hung up. The next hour, I spent printing an updated notice. I sealed it in a manila envelope, slipped in the exhibits, the POA, the repayment contract. On the front, I wrote in black marker access revoked. Unauthorized. Withdrawals documented. Repayment required. See attached. I slid the envelope into my backpack. The printer was still warm. So was the anger. I printed everything at the old 24-hour copy shop near the pier, the kind with flickering lights and paper dust in the corners. The clerk didn't ask questions. I fed the documents through the tray one by one. The repayment terms, the notarized POA, the full list of exhibits, photos, logs, receipts, transcripts. Each page slid out crisp, sharp, final. I wore gloves when sealing them, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted no smudges. I wanted everything clean, professional, undeniable. Outside, the streets of Vittorio were wet with mist. The salty wind pushed off the water and wrapped the sidewalks in something almost cinematic. I drove slowly past the places Landon and I used to walk as kids. The old coin laundromat. The comic book shop long since shuttered. A bench where we'd once fought over a stick of gum. Then I turned onto their street. Their porch light was off, but the hallway light inside flickered faintly through the blinds. I pulled to the curb and shut off the engine. For a moment, I just sat there breathing. I hadn't seen this house up close in months. It hadn't changed. Same crack in the stone pathway. Same dead hanging basket on the railing. Same worn welcome mat that no one ever meant. I took the envelope from the passenger seat and stepped out. The wind slapped against my coat. The chill, biting through the fabric. I walked to the door, pulled a strip of double-sided tape from my pocket, and pressed the envelope firmly onto the wood. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A shift in the curtain. I froze. Behind the frosted glass, a shadow moved. Slow, deliberate. And then, I saw her. My mother. Not in Maui. Not poolside. Right there in the hallway watching. She didn't open the door. Didn't speak. She just stood. I looked straight into the camera above the porch. The same one Dad had installed for package security. This time it caught me doing exactly what they never expected, delivering consequences. I walked back to my car, opened the door, and slid inside. I didn't start the engine right away. My phone lit up. Mom, what is this? Call me. Now. Mom, don't do this. Kais, please. Mom, you don't understand what you're doing. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I opened the Notes app and typed 6 words. Tomorrow, the board flips for good. Then, I turned the phone face down and drove home. It rained the entire next day. Not a light drizzle, but the kind of steady cold rain that makes everything feel heavier. I spent the morning organizing papers, laying them out on the kitchen table like I was preparing for a trial. In a way, I was. By mid-afternoon, Grandpa was in his chair by the window legs wrapped in a wool blanket, eyes watching the street. With quiet anticipation. He knew the way animals sense storms before they break. They didn't knock. The front door burst open like it had been kicked. My mother stepped in first, soaked from the rain, hair plastered to her cheek. She held the envelope in her fist like it had burned her. This, she snapped, slamming it on the table. This is how you treat your parents. I didn't flinch. This is how I treat thieves. My father stepped in behind her, his voice sharp, rehearsed. We didn't steal. We shifted resources for the good of the family. I turned slowly toward him. Which family? The one who worked doubles and skipped meals to build that account, or the one who flew to Maui and left? Grandpa with expired yogurt and overdue medication? He didn't answer. Tell me. I said, picking up the folder. When exactly did, for the good of the family become code for Landon gets whatever he wants. Landon stepped in last, hoodie, half-zipped, head down. I didn't ask for any of this, he mumbled. I laughed. No, you just accepted all of it. The trips, the car, the emergency transfers, while Grandpa waited 5 days for his prescription. I didn't know, but you didn't ask either. Silence. I opened the folder, pulled out the audio file transcript, and slid it across the table. Here's the call with Dad. And here I tapped a timestamp. That's you laughing in the background while he begs for help. My father's jaw tightened. We were stressed. No, I said. You were sunburnt and drunk. Grandpa shifted in his seat. He hadn't said a word. Now he rose slowly, cane in hand, and walked to the center of the room. He looked at each of them, his son, his daughter-in-law, his grandson. You took everything he said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade. And he's not making anything up. He's just giving it shape. My mother blinked like she didn't understand. This isn't fair, she whispered. No, I said. It's accurate. I pulled out the notarized POA and placed it on top of the folder. From now on, all medical and financial decisions for Grandpa come through me. You are not to touch another dime, not a single document, not one appointment. My father scoffed. You can't just erase us from the family. I'm not erasing anyone. I'm protecting what's left. From the window, we could see a few neighbors lingering by their porches. Curious voices carry. In Atoria, they always have. And this wasn't a town that forgot things easily. No one said anything after that. Mom stood, stiff arms crossed. Dad's lips were pressed into a hard line. Landon wouldn't meet my eyes. Grandpa turned and walked slowly back to his chair, sat, folded his hands, and for the first time, the house was quiet in a different way. Not empty, settled. Mine. By the time they returned, the rain had turned to wind. It rattled the windows and shook the old house like it was ready to shed its skin. The living room smelled faintly of cedar and reheated coffee. I had the fireplace going low and steady, not for warmth, but because it helped anchor the room, kept it from feeling like just another battlefield. I laid the documents out on the table, the POA, the repayment agreement, the bank statements, the transcript of the call, the notarized logs, all stacked in order, all accounted for. I sat at one end of the long wooden table. Grandpa sat across from me, silent, watchful. The space between us was paper thick and years wide. The front door creaked open without a knock. My mother entered. First, her coat unbuttoned, hair uncombed. She looked at the stack of folders like it was a bomb. My father followed behind, jaw tight, hands clenched. Landon dragged in last, hoodie up, eyes to the floor. I didn't stand. I didn't speak. I let them sit in the silence they'd made. Then I reached forward and pushed the top folder toward them. This is the final copy, I said. You've read it. Now sign it, or we go to court. Dad scoffed. This isn't a business meeting, Kais. We're family. No, I said you turned this family into a business, and then you ran it into the ground. Mom's eyes welled up, tears. Already rehearsed. We did what we had to do for Landon, for all of us. I opened the second folder and flipped to the pages marked in red. Charges for concert tickets, flight reservations, spa packages, equipment for some short-lived streaming channel Landon had abandoned in 3 weeks. You did it for yourselves, I said. Let's stop pretending otherwise. Landon leaned forward, voice rising. You've always hated that I got more. Just admit it. You resent me because I didn't have to work as hard. I stared at him. You're right. I did work harder. But I never resented you. I resented the silence that came every time I needed help and heard. We can't right now. While you got gifts for breathing. I pressed play on the laptop. The recorded call filled the room. Dad's voice trembling. My silence. Landon's laugh in the background, light and careless. That was the sound of my bank account draining. And they all heard it. Grandpa stood He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You took what wasn't yours, he said, cane, tapping against the wood floor. He's not punishing you. He's setting a boundary you never had the decency to draw. Yourselves. Mom wiped her cheek. We're your parents. You were, I said. But, right now, you're people I have to legally protect myself from. I placed the pen on top of the folder. Dad picked it up, looked at it like it might burn. This won't end well, he muttered. No, I said. It just won't end the way you're used to. They signed one after the other, hesitant strokes, hands trembling. Signatures that used to sign birthday cards now binding them to accountability. Landon didn't sign. He didn't have to. His name was on nothing. He just stood there, eyes wet, jaw set. He looked at Grandpa, then at me, then away. Outside, a couple of neighbors paused by the sidewalk. One looked toward the house, then quickly looked away. I gathered the signed pages, slid them into the envelope, sealed it. The pen clicked shut. We're not partners anymore, I said, standing. We're not even family in the way we used to be. From now on, you are what you've made yourselves to me, a debt to recover. I walked out of the room and let the silence fold in behind me. 2 weeks later, Grandpa moved into Oak Haven. His room was small but full of light, a soft chair by the window, a nightstand where I placed his crossword books and the photo of Grandma in her nurse's uniform. The staff greeted him by name. He smiled, said nothing, then sat by the window and looked out like he was already home. He never asked about the house again. I visited every few days, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to sit. He didn't need much. Mostly, he just wanted quiet. The kind that wasn't filled with footsteps, sneaking money out of drawers. Back in Seattle, I reopened my old savings account under a new name, new password, new everything. This time, I didn't tell anyone, not even Grandpa. I set up small auto deposits, just enough. I kept it simple: rent, food, rest, a clean desk, a solid lock. One night, I was walking to the corner store when a real estate listing popped up on my phone. The old house, ours, now theirs. The caption read, "Great bones, needs updates." The photo showed the porch, still cracked, the windows still bare, the same welcome mat. No welcome left. A week later, I drove down to Atoria for work. I didn't plan to stop, but the car turned on instinct. I slowed near the house. No lights, no car in the driveway. The for sale sign leaned sideways in the wind like it had been. They're too long. I didn't get out. I didn't need to. I just sat in the car, watching the curtains flutter behind the dirty glass. Remembering that first night I came home Christmas Eve, the note on the fridge, the empty shelves, the old man who hadn't eaten properly in days. I smiled. Then I said it out loud, just once, not for anyone else to hear. Some houses aren't homes, and some families only teach you what not to become. Then I put the car in gear and drove away for the last time. Back in Seattle, the city felt different. Not louder or busier, just clearer, like the fog had lifted. For weeks, I hadn't unpacked much. My clothes stayed in half-folded piles, my books still in boxes. The walls were bare, but I didn't mind. I was building peace, not decorating it. Every morning, I made coffee in silence and opened my laptop to check on two things: Arthur's Care updates from Oak Haven and the auto payment logs from my repayment terms file. Marjorie and Glenn never missed a payment, not because they suddenly became honorable, but because the legal consequences were too costly. The money wasn't what mattered. What mattered was control. And now I had it. No more secret withdrawals, no false emergencies, just a schedule they couldn't escape. I never responded to their brief, clipped emails, payments sent. That was all they ever wrote. That was all they were allowed to say. Now Landon disappeared entirely. No messages, no calls. His Instagram went dormant. I assumed the funding ran dry, and so did the desire to show off. I didn't check in. I didn't check out either. I just let silence do what confrontation never could. Once in mid-February, I drove down to Oak Haven without calling ahead. Arthur was sitting by the window, a crossword open on his lap. When he saw me, he smiled like he'd been expecting me anyway. "You know," he said, tapping his pen against the paper, "your grandmother used to say winter wasn't for silence. It was for making room." He pointed to the blank squares. "Look at all this room makes. You want to fill it with something worth it." I brought him a tin of oatmeal raisin cookies from a nearby bakery. He laughed when I handed them over. "Don't let the nurses catch me with these. They think sugar's the enemy." I told him I wouldn't say a word, just like he hadn't all those years, quietly enduring while others made decisions around him. He asked about the house in Etoria, if it had sold. It had. A retired couple from Bend had bought it looking for a project by the coast. I imagined them tearing out the moldy kitchen, replacing the drafty windows, never knowing how many fights and betrayals had echoed inside those walls. "They'll probably paint over the stains," I said. Arthur nodded. "Let them. The house had its time." "So, did they?" I visited twice a month after that. Never out of duty, always by choice. Each visit, Arthur seemed lighter. He read more, smiled easier. He even joined a chess group. The nurses called him Mr. A, said he was the only one who never forgot his appointments or his jokes. By March, my apartment began to feel like mine. I framed 2 photos. One of Arthur on the front porch of Oak Haven holding a puzzle box like a trophy, and one of myself the day I left Etoria. For good. Wind in my hair, key in my hand, eyes straight ahead. I took on freelance tech work again. Nothing major, just enough to keep the gears moving. For the first time in years, my finances were truly mine. No shared accounts, no family memos, no someone calling to ask, "Can I just borrow?" I said no to a lot of things now. No to guilt. No to explaining. No to fixing what others broke. One day I received a letter from Marjorie. Not email, not a message. A handwritten letter in her familiar loopy script. It wasn't an apology, not really. Just a string of explanations. "We thought we were doing what was right. We never meant to make you feel less important. Families make mistakes. At the end," she wrote, "we don't expect forgiveness, but maybe someday you'll let us be part of your life again." I folded it up, placed it in a drawer I rarely opened, and walked away. Some things don't need answers. Some chapters close without punctuation. That spring, I planted herbs on my windowsill: rosemary, basil, mint. Something about watching things grow slowly, deliberately felt right, like reclaiming time. Arthur passed away in early May. It was quiet, painless. A nurse found him by the window pen, still in hand, puzzle, half finished. They said he looked peaceful. He was cremated per his wishes. No formal service. I kept his crossword books, his reading glasses, and the pocket watch he always wound every Sunday. The rest I donated. I scattered his ashes near Cape Falcon, where he once took me fishing when I was 10. I whispered a thank you that day. "Thank you for waiting, for not giving up on me when others did." Back home, I updated the folder on my desktop from damage control to resolved. I didn't share this journey on social media. I didn't write a blog post. But sometimes late at night, I'd open the old files and remember how close I came to staying silent, how easy it would have been to just endure. But I didn't. I drew the line. I held it. And for once, nobody crossed it. If you've made it this far, maybe you've lived your own version of this story. Maybe you've come home to find the fridge empty and the people who were supposed to care gone. Maybe you've watched your trust, your love, your money slowly siphoned away by the very ones who taught you to put family first. Maybe you've been called dramatic, ungrateful, cold for simply setting a boundary, for saying no. I wrote this story because I know what it feels like to carry generations on your back and still be treated like the expendable one. I know what it feels like to walk into a room full of relatives and still feel completely alone. And most of all, I know the bone-deep soul, draining ache of loving people who take and take and take and never once say, "How are you really doing?" So, if you're reading this and something inside you stings a little, it's not weakness, it's recognition. Let's be honest, not all families deserve access to you just because you share a last name. Blood doesn't excuse betrayal. Obligation doesn't override dignity. There's nothing noble about sacrificing yourself for people who wouldn't bleed a drop for you. And still, many of us stay silent because speaking up makes us the problem, because calling things what they are, manipulation, financial abuse, emotional neglect, makes us unforgiving. We're taught that enduring quietly is more admirable than disrupting loudly. But here's what I've learned. Silence doesn't keep the peace. It only postpones the explosion. And boundaries are not revenge. They're oxygen. They are the lines we draw not to push others away, but to keep ourselves alive, to protect the small, fragile parts of us that still hope for something better. You are not cold for saying enough. You are not cruel for choosing peace over performance. You are not wrong for walking away from a table where love was conditional. You are allowed to rebuild. You are allowed to start over, even if that means becoming the first person in your family to say, "This ends with me." Arthur, the man who sat silently in the middle of the storm, didn't ask for justice. He didn't demand payback. All he wanted was to be seen, heard, respected. Sometimes the strongest love isn't loud. It's steady. It's showing up. It's boiling oatmeal at 2 a.m. for someone too proud to admit they're hungry. And sometimes the hardest truth is this: the people who failed you will never apologize the way you deserve. So don't wait for the perfect apology before you take the next step. Don't wait for them to change before you do. You don't need permission to reclaim your life. What you do need is belief. Belief that your pain is real, that your healing is worth fighting for, that the cycle can stop, that you don't have to pass on the brokenness just because it was handed to you. I hope this story gave you more than a narrative. I hope it gave you language, a mirror, a push. And if it did, if it made something shift in you, then don't let it sit. Speak it, write it, tell someone. Not every family is a safe place, but you can become one. For your future self, for the people who come after you, for the child in you who needed someone to say you didn't imagine it. You weren't too sensitive. It wasn't your fault. You deserve better. And now finally, you get to give that to yourself. So here's my call. Don't just survive your story. Rewrite it. Cut the characters who can't stay. Change the ending. Be the one who broke the chain, not the one who passed it on. And if no one's ever told you this before, I see you. I believe you. I'm proud of you. Keep going. You're not alone anymore. Thank you for choosing to read this, for giving your time, your heart, your presence. Stories like this are not easy to sit with. And if you made it through, it means you were brave enough to face something real. I don't take that lightly. Every reader who connects with this story becomes part of a quiet revolution. One that says truth matters more than appearances, and healing is worth the fight. The story continues in the next chapter in the next linked video. But first, I need you to subscribe to join the family, as we are looking forward to hit our first 10,000 subscribers target, and feel free to share your story in the comments.